Aaron had always believed that love was something people talked about in movies, big gestures, dramatic music, and magical moments that never really happened in ordinary life. But all of that began to change the summer he turned 12, when his mother sent him to stay with his grandfather in the countryside, a place where the days were quiet, the nights were filled with stars, and the forest began where the backyard ended. Aaron didn't think he'd enjoy it. There was no internet, no friends nearby, and no distractions except the whisper of wind across the fields. But on his very first morning, something unusual called him outside, the sound of soft, rhythmic footsteps just beyond the tree line, as if the forest itself was breathing. Curious, Aaron wandered toward the sound until he spotted a doe and her fragile fawn stepping into a beam of early sunlight. He froze, afraid he'd scare them away, but the mother simply watched him with calm, patient eyes. The fawn stumbled, its thin legs wobbling beneath it, and the doe gently lowered her head, nudging its side with the quietest whisper of encouragement. Aaron felt something warm in his chest. He'd seen people hold babies before, but watching a wild animal care so tenderly for its child felt different, pure and instinctive. He stood silently until they disappeared back into the trees, leaving behind an odd feeling he couldn't quite explain. Over the next few days, Aaron began to explore the forest more, almost without thinking. He found himself waking early, eager to see what new small miracle might be waiting. One morning, he discovered a pair of songbirds perched on a low branch, weaving blades of grass, twigs, and tiny bits of moss together to form a nest. The male bird chirped softly, as if encouraging his partner, while she shaped their home with her delicate beak. Aaron watched for nearly an hour, fascinated by the teamwork, the patience, and the trust between them. They weren't building a nest for themselves, they were preparing for a future family. Humans might have complicated explanations for love, but these birds showed it with actions, not words. A few days later, he stumbled upon something even more unexpected, a family of foxes resting in a quiet clearing. The mother fox dozed with her tail curled protectively around two sleepy cubs, while a third cub, bolder and brighter, trotted toward Aaron with cautious curiosity. Aaron held perfectly still, heart pounding. The cub sniffed the air, then gave a tiny, playful huff before darting back to its siblings. When the mother lifted her head, Aaron felt a sudden rush of respect. There was nothing aggressive in her gaze, only the fierce, unbreakable devotion of a parent making sure her young were safe. The bond between them was so clear, so natural, that Aaron found himself smiling without knowing why. But the day that changed everything came near the end of the week. Aaron had walked deeper into the forest than usual, following the sound of running water until he reached a creek where stones glistened beneath the rippling surface. As he knelt to splash cool water onto his face, he noticed movement at the corner of his vision, a small, trembling dog, thin enough that its ribs showed through its fur. It stood on the opposite bank, watching him with terrified eyes. Aaron's heart sank. This wasn't a wild animal. This was a creature that had known humans, and for some reason had been abandoned or lost. Slowly, carefully, Aaron reached into his pocket and pulled out the piece of bread his grandfather had packed him for lunch. He placed it on a flat rock and stepped back. The dog hesitated, then limped forward, sniffing the bread before cautiously eating it. Aaron sat cross-legged on the ground, giving the animal space, speaking softly when it looked his way. Over the next hour, the dog moved closer, drawn not by the food but by the tone of Aaron's voice, a gentle tone he didn't even realize he'd been using. When the dog finally rested its head on Aaron's knee, he felt something inside him shift. This creature had suffered, been scared, maybe even forgotten, yet it still chose to trust him. That moment glowed in Aaron's chest like a warm lantern. He named the dog Willow. Bringing Willow home wasn't easy. The dog flinched at sudden sounds and refused to sleep unless Aaron was within reach. But every day, Willow grew braver. And every day, Aaron changed too. He learned to wake up early so he could feed her before exploring the forest. He learned patience, real patience, the kind that meant sitting quietly beside her until she felt safe. And he learned responsibility, because Willow depended on him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with gold, Aaron sat on the porch with his grandfather, Willow asleep at their feet. His grandfather puffed on his pipe and said, "You've grown, boy. You see things differently now." Aaron didn't answer at first.